The latest Thai disaster drama of 2024, The Package, has finally premiered online. In its first week, the series garnered an impressive score of 8.7 on Thailand's local review sites. The story begins 10 years ago, when a mysterious virus emerged on Earth. Once infected, both humans and animals would turn into terrifying zombies. In just 2.5 years, the virus spread worldwide. To eliminate the infected, humanity resorted to launching nuclear bombs. However, even after the bombs were dropped, the disaster could not be averted, and 99% of humanity was infected by the plague. Just when all hope seemed lost, scientists discovered a plant, codenamed X. This plant could not only be used as food but also suppress the virus. A small piece of this plant could provide a human with all the energy they needed for a day. The survivors established new experimental bases amidst the ruins and began mass cultivating this plant. To deliver this plant to the survivors' camps, a group of special riders emerged. They traveled between various gathering spots, bringing the necessary supplies to the survivors. Although this task was noble, it was also fraught with danger. One wrong move could lead to an attack by the infected, while the plant could suppress the virus. It only bought time. Once bitten, the injured would still mutate. Whenever this happened, teammates would unhesitatingly shoot the infected. Fa was one of the riders. Seeing her fallen comrades, she felt sorrow but also helplessness. Little did she know that she too would soon become food for the mutants. After dealing with her infected comrade, Fa received a mission from the leader of the riders. They were to deliver a batch of supplies to Refugee Camp 33 and bring back an important serum for the infected. Fa wasted no time. She and her team quickly arrived at the camp, but upon arrival, they found the place littered with corpses, staff lying in pools of blood. Fa clearly remembered that there were over 30 people in this camp, including guards with heavy weapons. How could it have fallen? Though puzzled, Fa didn't dwell on it. She and her companions headed to the camp's laboratory to retrieve the research data, but upon reaching the lab, they discovered that the data was gone. Even the supplies and radios they had previously delivered were looted. Fa only found a hard drive in the cabinet. It was evident that this refuge had not fallen because of the infected. At that moment, a noise came from deep within the corridor. When they went to investigate, they found that the iron cages in the laboratory were holding many infected individuals. Fa immediately sensed danger and wanted to retreat quietly, but suddenly, a shot was fired from a corner. The infected, alerted by the noise, rushed toward them, forcing them to fight their way out. Fortunately, there weren't many infected in the lab. With their skilled experience, they successfully eliminated all the infected. At that moment, Fa spotted a shadow in the corner. She quickly led her teammates in pursuit, but the figure moved too fast, and they lost sight of it. Considering the area was filled with infected, Fa didn't linger. They found a van in the lab's parking lot and quickly evacuated the scene. Back at the base, Fa reported the disaster at the refuge to the leader. Upon hearing that another refuge had met a tragic fate, the leader felt helpless. It turned out that the refuge Fa and her team went to was not an ordinary refuge but a research base for the infected. 2.5 hours earlier, the leader had received news that the lab had successfully developed an antiviral serum. However, the serum needed to be combined with the X plant for testing, prompting the leader to urgently send Fa to the refuge. How could the base have fallen within a few hours? Hearing the leader's words, Fa remembered the hard drive in the cabinet and quickly took it out. Though feeling frustrated, the leader did not blame Fa. He took a few X-plants out of the cupboard as a bonus. After Fa left, the leader opened the hard drive. However, after viewing the data on the hard drive, the leader suddenly became agitated. He hurriedly went to the warehouse and found the van that Fa and her team had driven back. In the trunk, the leader discovered a box. Inside the box was an infected individual. The leader was about to look for Fa when he suddenly heard shouting from within the base. It turned out that one of the teammates who had been on the mission with Fa was bitten by the infected during the fight. For fear of being shot in the head, this teammate chose to hide it. He injected himself with a large dose of the suppressant to pass the equipment checks, but as soon as he returned to the base, he mutated and attacked the teammates nearby. Hearing the alarm, Fa and the others quickly rushed out, but by then, the entire base was already in chaos, with the infected teammate frantically attacking others. After a fierce battle, Fa and her team finally cleared out the infected, but now, only 3 people had survived in the entire base. Fa wanted the leader to evacuate immediately, but he refused. He lifted his shirt to reveal a wound on his abdomen. It turned out that during the fight, the leader had been bitten by an infected teammate. He knew he was also infected. The leader took out the hard drive that Fa had brought back. The hard drive contained the research logs of the Refuge. The infected individual in the box was the result of the lab's research. His body contained antiviral cells. The leader instructed Fa and the surviving teammate, Din, to deliver the data and the infected individual to Refugee Camp 1. That camp had the necessary equipment and labs to quickly develop the serum. Seeing the leader's determination, they didn't hesitate. They took the materials and set off on their journey. When they reached the outskirts, Fa opened the hand-drawn map. Refugee Camp 1 was located in Bangkok, several hundred kilometers away. They had to pass through several cities on the way. Cities were filled with infected individuals. To avoid accidents, Fa decided to take shortcuts through the back roads, but they didn't know that the wilderness was filled not only with the infected but also with dangerous humans. Not long after they set off, a fallen tree blocked their path. Just as Din was about to find some tools, a bandit suddenly emerged from the grass and took Fa hostage. Din reached for his gun, but several more bandits appeared behind him. They were all taken captive. The leader of the bandits began rummaging through the car, and when he found the explants in the backpack, the bandits were overjoyed. At that moment, a bandit discovered the box in the car. Thinking it was filled with supplies, he eagerly pried it open, only to find an infected individual inside. Seeing the infection indicator on the man's wrist, the bandits were at a loss. But before they could react, the man in the box suddenly awoke. His combat skills were formidable. Within moments, he had taken down the bandits surrounding him. Seeing the man's face, Fa stood there in shock. The man who was fighting was no other than Fa's boyfriend, Park. When the disaster struck, Fa and Park were trapped in a mall. To protect Fa, Park stepped forward to distract the infected. She had seen Park being torn apart by dozens of infected. How could he still be alive? Fa shouted to confirm if the man before her was really Park, but Park did not recognize her. Seeing Park's reaction, Fa was confused as well, but now was not the time to dwell on it. They needed to get Park to Refugee Camp 1. Leaving the back roads, they arrived at a small refuge. Fa wanted to refuel and gather supplies, but upon entering the shelter, they discovered it had long since fallen. Din discovered a barrel of gasoline in the backyard. Just as he was about to refuel, a remote-controlled car suddenly rolled up to his feet. Before he could figure out what was happening, the car emitted a low-frequency sound wave. The strange sound wave affected Park too. The numbers on his wrist began to surge rapidly. When the numbers exceeded 50%, Park suddenly became violent and started attacking an infected with frenzy. In his confusion, Park's mind was flooded with memories. He remembered that after being bitten, he didn't mutate but was captured by a group of people. When he next opened his eyes, he was in a lab, with researchers studying him. At that moment, the numbers on Park's arm dropped, and he regained his clarity. Seeing Park's berserk state, Fa hurriedly pulled him into the van. After driving on the back roads for 2 days, they reached the vicinity of a forest. According to the map, they only needed to cross this mountain to reach the refuge, but by then, the van was out of gas, leaving them no choice but to proceed on foot. As soon as they entered the forest, Fa noticed a large number of infected ahead. These infected were strange. They stood still in one area, seemingly in a dormant state. It turned out that the infected were particularly sensitive to low-frequency sound waves. They were not in a dormant state but were attracted by disturbances in the forest. Fa originally wanted to go through the forest quietly, but who knew that they were just halfway through the forest when the ear-splitting noise suddenly came from the forest. Before they could react, a horde of infected rushed at them. In the chaos, Fa got separated from the group, and an infected spotted her. Just as the infected was about to bite her, Park appeared. Possibly due to being bitten, the virus in Park's body activated, causing him to lose his sanity and snap the infected's neck with his bare hands. Meanwhile, Din, who was separated from the group, found the sound system's controller in the forest. He turned off the broadcast, and the infected in the forest returned to their dormant state. Din searched the forest, trying to find out who was behind the disturbance, but he couldn't find the person controlling the sound system. As night fell, they didn't linger and quickly descended the mountain. Arriving at Refugee Camp 1, Fa was dumbfounded when he arrived at the shelter, which had already fallen, and was in a state of complete disarray. This was the largest survivor camp. If it had fallen, the other camps were likely in jeopardy too. Just as they were wondering what to do, Din discovered an infected staff member in the corridor. He signaled to Fa and Park to stay quiet and prepare to retreat, but Park accidentally stepped on some debris. The noise attracted the infected, who swarmed towards them. When they were cornered with no way out, a man appeared in the corridor. The man seemed familiar with the laboratory. He led them through a series of twists and turns until they reached another corridor. Din covered their retreat, trying to lock the door, but found that the lock was on the outside. To buy them time, Din stayed behind alone to block the infected. Seeing Din being torn to pieces, Fa was heartbroken. Under the man's guidance, they reached the Refuge's laboratory. On the laboratory computer, they saw the reason for the Refuge's downfall. It turned out this Refuge had also developed a serum, but they had no live subjects for testing. To verify whether the serum would work, a scientist used a colleague as a test subject. The result was disastrous. Not only did the serum fail to suppress the virus, but it also caused it to mutate, leading to the fall of the entire Refuge. Seeing the footage, Fa was stunned. At that moment, an infected scientist burst into the room. Fa quickly raised her gun and decisively shot one of the infected. Park was attacked by two infected. Because he was bitten, he felt the power within him raging uncontrollably. After a few minutes of fighting, they managed to eliminate all the infected. However, Fa turns his gun on the man from earlier. It turned out Fa recognized him as the person who had attacked her at Refugee Camp 33. Facing her suspicion, the man, Chalk, had no choice but to reveal the truth. He was also a staff member of this laboratory. Chalk had developed a serum himself, but its effects were weak, only providing temporary clarity. To survive, Chalk had to keep injecting himself with the serum. A few days ago, he received information about an immune individual at a refuge, so he headed to Refugee Camp 33. But when he arrived, the refuge had already fallen. Chalk intended to take Park back to the lab for research, but Fa and her team arrived just then. To prevent Fa from taking Park, he deliberately made noise, but by a twist of fate, Fa drove away with the van. Because he had been bitten earlier, Chalk didn't dare enter any camp. He could only follow the group from a distance. It was Chalk who had awakened the infected in the forest. Chalk wanted to use Park for experiments to develop a serum, but midway through his explanation, Chalk's eyes suddenly turned blood red. Without hesitation, Fa shot and killed Chalk. At that moment, Park's wrist alarm suddenly went off. He looked at his arm and saw the counter had spiked to 99%. Sensing danger, Park locked himself in a room. Seeing this, Fa was at a loss for what to do. Before she could speak, Park drew a vial of blood from his body. During the fight, Park had recalled his past memories. When the infection level reached 100%, he would completely lose his sanity. To avoid hurting Fa, Park chose to lock himself up. He instructed Fa to take his blood and find a new refuge. As long as a serum could be developed, humanity could be saved. Just then, the sounds of infected growling echoed down the hallway. Though heartbroken, now was not the time to hesitate. Fa took the computer's hard drive and Park's blood, leaving the lab. Shortly after she left, a group of heavily armed men arrived at the lab and took the critically injured Park. Will Fa find a new refuge? Can humanity be saved? This concludes the first episode of the latest 2024 Thai disaster web series, The Package. Overall, the quality of the series is just passable. It's just that the main plot is very slow, so we'll have to wait for updates. Well, that's all for today. We'll see you next time.